I found the letters because the upstairs bathroom pipe burst at 2 in the morning. That's it. That's the stupid reason my marriage collapsed. Water was leaking through the ceiling into the kitchen, and my wife, Claire, was panicking while I dragged old storage boxes out of the hall closet to stop them from getting soaked. One of the boxes split open when I picked it up. Papers spilled everywhere across the tile floor. At first I wasn't even paying attention. Old tax returns, birthday cards, random junk from before we got married. Then I saw his name. Daniel. I hadn't heard that name in years. Claire froze when she noticed what I was holding. Not normal freezing either. It was immediate. Full-body panic. Like someone had pointed a gun at her. She said, "Don't read that." And obviously the second someone says that, you read it. The paper looked old. Folded so many times the edges were soft. I remember standing there with water dripping from the ceiling while reading the sentence that basically detonated my life. "I don't think I'll ever stop loving you." Not loved. Loving. Present tense. I actually laughed at first because it felt absurd. We'd been married 12 years. 2 kids. Mortgage. School pickups. Costco memberships. All the boring married life stuff that tricks you into believing you're safe. Claire kept saying my name quietly. Ethan. Ethan. But my ears were ringing too hard to hear anything else. And the worst part? The letter was dated 3 months before our wedding. Before all this, I genuinely thought we had a good marriage. Not perfect. I'm not delusional. We fought about money sometimes. Parenting. Sex became less frequent after the second kid. Life got repetitive. But I thought repetitive meant stable. Claire was warm, funny, organized in a way I admired because I'm chaos disguised as a functioning adult. She remembered birthdays, dentist appointments, teacher meetings. She held our entire life together while I worked long hours and convinced myself I was providing. We met when I was 32. She was finishing graduate school. I fell hard for her immediately. The only thing that ever bothered me was how weird she got when her ex-boyfriend came up. Daniel wasn't just some old college fling. From what I understood, they were together for almost 8 years. They nearly got married. Apparently he left suddenly for a job overseas, and everything fell apart after that. Early in our relationship, I noticed she still kept photos of them in old albums. Not displayed. Just hidden away. One night I asked why she still had them. She shrugged and said, "He was a huge part of my life. Throwing everything away feels fake." At the time, I actually respected that answer. Now I replay every conversation like security footage after a crime. There were other signs too. She'd go quiet if someone mentioned Paris because that's where they traveled together. She cried once after hearing a song I later learned was their song. I noticed all of it. And ignored all of it. Because when someone loves you consistently for years, you stop questioning whether part of them belongs somewhere else. The thing nobody tells you is that betrayal doesn't arrive all at once. It spreads backward. You start reinterpreting years of memories through a completely different lens. After finding the letters, I became obsessed. I wish I could say I handled it maturely, but I turned into someone I barely recognized. Claire begged me not to keep reading. I read every single page anyway. There were dozens of them. Some handwritten. Some printed emails. Most were from before our marriage, but not all. That's what destroyed me. There were newer messages buried between old ones. Not recent, but recent enough. 5 years ago. 4 years ago. 2 years ago. Not overtly sexual. Honestly, emotional affairs are worse because there's no clean line to point at. One email from her said, "I still compare everyone to you, even when I hate myself for it." Another, "I chose stability because I couldn't survive heartbreak again." I must have read that sentence 50 times. Stability. That's what I was. Not love. Not passion. Not her first choice. A safe option. I confronted her immediately, standing in our kitchen while wet drywall dripped into a bucket beside us. She looked exhausted before she even spoke. "It's not what you think," she whispered. I remember laughing again because apparently that became my trauma response. "What exactly am I supposed to think, Claire?" She started crying almost instantly. And somewhere deep down, I already knew the answer before she admitted anything. Claire told me she never physically cheated. To this day, I honestly don't know if that's true. Part of me believes her because she looked genuinely horrified while saying it. Another part of me thinks people can cry and lie simultaneously. Humans do it every day. But she admitted she stayed emotionally attached to Daniel our entire marriage. Not constantly. Not obsessively. But enough. Enough to secretly email him every few years. Enough to wonder about him during hard moments between us. Enough to keep every letter he ever sent her. I asked the question I shouldn't have asked. "Did you love him more than me?" She didn't answer fast enough. That silence probably hurt more than any confession could have. Finally she said, "It's different. Different. God, I hate that word now." I started shouting. Loud enough that our oldest son came downstairs asking what was happening. Claire immediately switched into mom mode and told him everything was fine. Everything was not fine. After he went back upstairs, I asked her the question that had been eating through me like acid. "Why did you marry me?" And she answered too honestly. "Because you stayed." That sentence still wakes me up some nights. Not because it was cruel. Because I think it was true. Daniel left her. I didn't. I was dependable. Safe. Loyal. I built my entire identity around being a good husband and father, only to discover I'd apparently been someone's emotional shelter from another heartbreak. I slept in the guest room that night. Or tried to. Mostly I stared at the ceiling until sunrise, feeling like my entire life had been quietly rewritten behind my back. The next few weeks were ugly. Not dramatic movie ugly. Worse. Quiet ugly. We still had to make lunches for the kids. Pay bills. Drive to soccer practice. Smile at neighbors. Pretend our marriage wasn't bleeding out internally. Claire kept trying to explain herself. She said people can love more than one person in a lifetime. She said loving Daniel never meant she loved me less. She said nostalgia and grief had tangled together over the years until she couldn't separate them anymore. I listened sometimes. Other times I walked away because hearing her defend those feelings made me physically sick. One night I finally asked the question I'd been avoiding. "Did you ever wish you married him instead?" She covered her face immediately. That told me enough before she even answered. Then she whispered, "Sometimes." I don't think she understood what hearing that does to a person. It rearranges your self-worth permanently. I started comparing myself to a ghost. Some guy who wasn't even present in our lives anymore somehow still occupied emotional real estate inside my wife's heart. I became paranoid about everything. Every distant look. Every quiet moment. Every time she seemed emotionally unavailable. I wondered if she was mentally somewhere else with him. The worst part is she kept apologizing sincerely, and I still couldn't stop hurting. Because apologies don't erase years of hidden truth. They just confirm it existed. Then came the detail that completely shattered whatever stability I had left. Claire admitted Daniel contacted her the week before our wedding. Not casually. He asked her not to marry me. I remember sitting perfectly still when she confessed this. Like my body stopped functioning correctly. Apparently he had come back to the country unexpectedly after years abroad. He emailed her saying he'd made a mistake leaving and wanted another chance. I asked what she did. She said she met him for coffee. Coffee. The way she said it made it sound harmless, but I nearly lost my mind hearing it. "You met your ex-boyfriend who confessed he still loved you days before marrying me?" She started crying again. "Yes." "And?" She said they talked for hours. He told her he regretted everything. He told her he still pictured a future with her. He asked her to leave with him. At this point, I honestly felt nauseous. Then I asked the question that really mattered. Why didn't you? Claire looked at me with this devastating expression I still can't fully describe. Because I didn't trust him not to hurt me again. Not because she loved me more. Not because she chose me fully. Because I was safer. I stood up so fast the chair slammed backward into the wall. I remember saying, "So I was the backup plan." And she screamed back, "No! You were the better man!" But those aren't the same thing. Not even close. After that conversation, something inside me changed permanently. I became colder. Not intentionally at first. It just happened. Claire would touch my arm, and my body stiffened automatically. She'd say, "I love you," and my brain immediately translated it into, "But not the most." People talk about betrayal like it's explosive. Sometimes it's erosion instead. Tiny emotional collapses every single day. I stopped sleeping beside her consistently. I lost weight because anxiety destroyed my appetite. At work, I'd stare at spreadsheets for 20 minutes without understanding what I was reading. Meanwhile, Claire spiraled too. She started over-explaining everything. Overcompensating. Leaving long texts about how much our family meant to her. One night she broke down and admitted she hated herself for never fully letting go of Daniel emotionally. "I thought it would fade eventually," she said. "But it didn't." That honesty should have helped. Instead, it made things worse because I realized she wasn't manipulating me. She was genuinely conflicted. Which somehow hurt more. If she'd been cruel or malicious, I could have hated her cleanly. But she loved me. I know she did. Just not in the uncomplicated way I thought. And once you realize your spouse carries another person inside them emotionally, intimacy starts feeling contaminated. Even ordinary moments changed. Watching movies together. Cooking dinner. Folding laundry. Everything carried this invisible third presence between us. A man I'd barely met was suddenly haunting my entire marriage. My sister found out accidentally. I made the mistake of drinking too much whiskey at her house one night while the kids were playing downstairs. She asked if everything was okay because apparently I looked like death. And once I started talking, I couldn't stop. I told her everything. The letters. The emails. The coffee before the wedding. She got furious immediately. Not sad. Furious. "She married you while emotionally in love with someone else?" Hearing it phrased that bluntly almost knocked the air out of me. Because that was exactly what happened. My sister wanted me to leave Claire immediately. My mother agreed after she found out too. Suddenly everybody had opinions about my marriage. Some people called Claire selfish. Others said emotional history is complicated and marriages survive worse. I hated all of them for discussing my life like a courtroom case. Meanwhile, Claire's parents defended her completely. Her mother actually said, "People don't just erase first loves." That sentence nearly started a screaming match. What nobody understood was this. I didn't expect Claire to erase her past. I just thought I was her present completely. That's the distinction that destroyed me. Even our children sensed something changing. My daughter asked why Mommy cried so much lately. My son asked why I stopped sleeping in the same room. Those questions gutted me worse than any argument ever could. Because now our private damage was leaking into them too. About 2 months after finding the letters, I did something I'm still ashamed of. I contacted Daniel. I wish I could pretend I took the high road, but I didn't. I found him through social media after obsessively searching for days. Divorced. Living in Seattle. No kids. I messaged him late at night after drinking. All I wrote was, "Did you ever stop loving my wife?" He replied the next morning, "No." That single word ruined my entire week. We ended up talking on the phone eventually, which sounds insane now. I expected to hate him immediately, but honestly, he sounded sad more than anything. He admitted he regretted leaving Claire years ago. He admitted they'd stayed emotionally connected off and on. Then he said something that still rattles around in my head constantly. She chose you because you gave her the life I couldn't. Again with that word. Chose. Like I won some miserable competition I never agreed to participate in. I asked him if he thought Claire still loved him. Long silence. Then he said quietly, I think part of her always will. After we hung up, I sat in my car for nearly an hour unable to move. Because hearing it from him somehow made it undeniable. I wasn't imagining things. I wasn't insecure or paranoid. My marriage genuinely contained another unfinished love story the entire time. And I had never even known. Claire completely lost it when she discovered I contacted Daniel. She said I crossed a line? I actually laughed in her face when she said that. A line? Seriously? That argument became nuclear immediately. Years of buried resentment exploded out of both of us. I accused her of using me emotionally. She accused me of reducing our entire marriage to one unresolved relationship from her past. I shouted, because apparently he was always there with us. She shouted back, not in the way you think. But by then, definitions barely mattered anymore. Pain had replaced logic completely. At one point she screamed, I built a life with you. And I screamed back, while mourning someone else. The kids heard that fight. I'll regret that forever. My son started crying upstairs. The second I heard him, all the anger drained out of me instantly and turned into shame. Claire locked herself in the bathroom afterward. I sat outside my son's bedroom apologizing through the door while feeling like absolute garbage. That night was the first time divorce became real in my mind. Not theoretical. Not emotional. Real. I started imagining separate apartments. Custody schedules. Holidays divided in half. And weirdly, the thing that hurt most wasn't losing Claire. It was realizing the version of our marriage I believed in had probably never existed at all. We tried therapy. Of course we did. 12 years of marriage and 2 children practically obligate you to try before detonating everything. The therapist was kind but brutally perceptive. Within 2 sessions she identified the core problem immediately. Claire had unresolved grief tied to Daniel. And I had built my emotional security around believing I was fully chosen. Neither of us knew how to survive after that illusion collapsed. During one session, the therapist asked Claire directly, if Daniel had returned before you married Ethan and proven he changed, what would you have done? Claire started crying instantly. I didn't even need the answer anymore. But she gave one anyway. I don't know. That uncertainty hit me harder than a definitive yes would have. Because uncertainty means possibility. Possibility means our entire marriage rested on circumstances instead of certainty. After therapy sessions, Claire usually tried holding my hand in the car. Sometimes I let her. Sometimes I stared out the window pretending not to notice. The therapist kept encouraging me to separate my wife's love for me from her unresolved feelings for someone else. But emotionally, I couldn't do it. Everything became comparison. Was she happier with him? Did she think about him during our wedding? Did she settle for me? Questions like that poison your brain slowly. And once they're there, they spread into every quiet moment. The cruelest part is that Claire genuinely tried afterward. For almost a year, she tried harder than ever. She cut all contact with Daniel completely. Showed me passwords voluntarily. Planned date nights. Wrote me letters explaining why she loved me specifically. And some days, I almost believed we could recover. Then something random would trigger me again. A song. A mention of Seattle. An old photograph. I'd spiral instantly. Trust once broken becomes strangely physical. I stopped feeling emotionally safe around her. Even intimacy changed. There were moments during sex when I suddenly wondered if she'd imagined him instead of me at some point during our marriage. That thought can hollow a person out from the inside. I never told her that specific fear because it felt too humiliating. Instead, I withdrew quietly. Claire noticed, obviously. One night she asked me something devastating. Are you ever going to forgive me for being human? I didn't answer because I honestly didn't know. Was this normal human complexity? Or was it betrayal? Even now I still can't fully decide. That ambiguity is what makes this story so hard to explain to people. Nothing technically happened. No affair I could prove. No hotel receipts. No secret child. Just years of emotional loyalty split between two men. And somehow that hurt worse than something concrete ever could have. Eventually Claire admitted something else. Not because I discovered it. Because guilt finally broke her down. A few months before our wedding, after meeting Daniel for coffee, she went to his hotel room. She swore nothing physical happened. She said they talked, cried, held each other, and said goodbye. Maybe that's true. Maybe it isn't. At that point, honesty itself had become unstable territory. But what crushed me wasn't even the possibility of physical cheating. It was imagining my fiancée emotionally saying farewell to another life right before marrying me. I asked her why she never told me any of this before the wedding. She answered immediately. Because I knew you wouldn't marry me. And there it was. The truth underneath everything. She made the choice for me. She decided I deserved less information so she could keep the future she wanted. That realization rearranged something fundamental inside me. Consent matters emotionally too. If I'd known she was still deeply entangled with Daniel, I honestly don't know if I would have married her. Maybe I still would have. But it would have been my decision. Not one made through omission. After that conversation, I drove around for hours alone. I remember pulling into a grocery store parking lot and suddenly crying so hard I could barely breathe. Not loud, dramatic crying. The silent kind. The kind that feels like your body is collapsing internally. We separated quietly about 18 months after the pipe burst. No screaming final scene. No dramatic betrayal exposed publicly. Just exhaustion. Emotional exhaustion on both sides. Claire moved into a townhouse 20 minutes away so the kids could keep their school and routines. We split custody evenly. People kept asking vague questions, and we gave vague answers. Things changed. We grew apart. The truth felt too complicated and embarrassing to explain. Because how do you tell people your marriage ended partly because your wife loved you and someone else simultaneously? Even now, saying it out loud sounds ridiculous. The separation devastated Claire. Despite everything, I know she never wanted to lose our family. That's what still messes with my head sometimes. She wasn't a villain. Just emotionally divided in a way that eventually destroyed us both. The hardest moments are still the ordinary ones. Dropping the kids off. Seeing her buy groceries alone. Watching someone who used to share your entire daily existence become emotionally unreachable. Occasionally we still talk longer than necessary at the door. Sometimes she cries. Sometimes I almost touch her face instinctively before remembering we aren't those people anymore. And the sick part? A piece of me still loves her deeply. Maybe enough to have stayed if I'd never found those letters. That thought haunts me constantly. It's been 3 years now. I'm writing this because I found another old box while cleaning my apartment tonight, and for 10 full seconds I couldn't breathe. Trauma rewires stupid things into threats. Cardboard boxes. Old paper. Certain songs. I still think about Claire almost every day. Not with rage anymore. Mostly sadness. I've dated since then, but trust feels different now. Conditional. Fragile. I listen too carefully when people mention exes. I notice hesitation in ways I never used to. Part of me wonders if everybody carries unfinished love stories quietly through their relationships. Maybe Claire was just honest enough to get caught eventually. I don't know. What I do know is this. Being loved is not always the same thing as being chosen completely. And once you feel the difference, it changes you permanently. The last conversation Claire and I had about all this happened almost a year ago. She said, crying again. I did love you, Ethan. I still do. And I believed her. That's the tragedy. If I thought she never loved me, moving on would have been easier. Instead, I have to live with something far messier. She loved me. She just never stopped loving him too.